Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chat with Beyond Type 2. I'm Tiara, and I'm the Senior Project Manager of Beyond Type 2. Beyond Type 2 is part of the nonprofit Beyond Type 1. We provide resources for people impacted by type 2 diabetes on topics such as exercise, medication. We share personal stories. So basically, we are your type 2 resource hub. And today, I'm so excited to be joined by one of my favorite people in the diabetes community, and he is such a great guy. He makes you feel happy, and that is a pun because I'm going to introduce him in a bit. But today we're going to be talking about hypoglycemia and type 2 diabetes. Hypoglycemia is an important issue because we talk a lot about high blood sugar, but with low blood sugar it can be acute and it can have some serious complications. So we want to make sure that you are prepared and ready to handle a low blood sugar episode. Now I'll introduce my guest. His name is Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic. Robert, thank you so much for joining me today. You know how much I admire you. Thank you for jumping on with me today. How are you?
The privilege is mine, really. I've never had it so good. And listen, you're one of my favorite people, so I'm so honored to be here. That's for sure.
And everyone, like Robert is such an amazing cook. Like we're definitely going to get into the topic, but I met Robert in person for the first time at TCOID, Taking Control of Your Diabetes conference in San Diego in the before times. And Robert made this just delicious salad and like this lemon bar. I think it was like a sugar-free lemon bar. Was it, Robert?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just, I can still taste it. It was amazing. So Robert, if you have like the recipe, I can put it in the description box so people can also experience how delicious it was. But Robert is like one of the best people that you'll meet in the diabetes online community. So I'm really honored to be joined by him today.
That's so kind. Thank you so much.
And Robert has also been part of our other panels on food, nutrition, and diabetes at our Beyond Type 1 community table. So I'll also drop a link there if you want to check that discussion out too. So,
Yeah,
Robert,
yes,
let's chat a bit about your diabetes diagnosis. Could you tell people how you were diagnosed with diabetes?
sure. So, 1998, I was traveling home to Iowa from a vacation in Colorado, not feeling good. um, Tired, super thirsty, had to use the bathroom at almost every rest stop. Something was going on. I wasn't sure what it was all about. Got back to my hometown, went to go see my doctor and explained to him what was going on. He said, "Well, let's do some tests." And he brought out this box. He wheeled it in, kind of a thing, and they said, "We need to take a little bit of blood. Stick your finger out." And he had this like guillotine poking device, and he took a bunch of blood. We put it in the machine, and the number 475 showed up. And he
Wow.
said, "Wow." He said, "This is amazing. Congratulations. You have diabetes." And I said, "Well, what's that?"
Congratulations.
Yeah, sort of
Wow.
kind. I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "Hold on, I'll be right back." And he left, came back with a bunch of pamphlets, put them in my arms, and said, "Here, go home and read this. This is everything you need to know about diabetes. This will clear it all up for you." And that was kind of like my journey. That's how it kind of started.
Wow. And did those pamphlets clear it up for you?
Are you kidding? I threw them right away and said, "This is not going to be the disease for me." Right. So I went right away into denial for about 6 months. I didn't take my medicine like I should, wasn't check. I mean, really, check my blood sugar. I poked myself intentionally. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't, this was not going to be the disease for me because I heard a lot about it's all about eating and you can't eat this and you shouldn't eat this and don't smell this and don't get near this. And so I thought, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after about 6 months, things were not good for me. So, with the help of my wife, Cindy, who hooked me up with my local hospital and we did some diabetic classes, I had kind of a diabetic spiritual awakening
Yeah.
and I started taking ownership in my disease.
Yeah.
That's about how it happened.
And you mentioned like about the things that you can and cannot eat. Where were you in your career as a chef at this point?
Well, so I was a corporate chef.
Okay.
So I worked for a chain of restaurants. We had about 50 restaurants in 7 states. So I was in charge of product development
Mhm.
and training, right? So although I wasn't working daily in a restaurant as a chef, which I have done for many years, I was creating and eating and tasting and putting together dishes that we might serve. So a
Yeah.
lot of research and development.
Wow. And so what changes did you have to make? I guess like as a someone who is very skilled in the culinary arts, like was it easy for you to make that transition to a more diabetic friendly diet? What was that like for you?
It wasn't really that difficult once I really learned the foundation. Once I poured a slab of cement and knew basically what the foundation of a diabetic friendly recipe was,
Yeah.
then I just started creating. I bought some nutritional software. I started learning about what effect foods had on carbohydrates and sodium, and just tried to create chef inspired foods that tasted amazing. Because for me, that's what was missing. I mean, I went to Borders, I went to a bookstore looking for cookbooks written by chefs with diabetes, nothing.
Yeah.
Lot written by dietitians, a lot written by doctors, but they weren't really the kind of food that I liked.
Yeah.
Fresh vegetables and sauteed dishes and fun and creative flavors.
Right. Right.
So I just started hacking away.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're so right. It like when you are first diagnosed with diabetes, a lot of the foods that you see that are recommended are kind of bland, and they don't have the kind of oomph and flavor that you want, and
Right,
that joy of food is so integral
right,
to the
right,
diabetes journey. Now,
right.
when you were actually learning about diabetes, you brought up how how you were on medications. What were you did you start on insulin, or were you on like an
So,
SSU?
yeah, so no, I was on metformin
Hmm.
and like glucophage. I mean, those were kind of the two things we started with. And that I was on that for so many years and really struggled with my blood control. But, you know, suddenly I got a handle on the fact that there's a correlation between portion size,
Hmm.
exercise, taking my medicines when I'm supposed to, and
Hmm.
seeing my doctor on a regular basis
Hmm.
that really started to turn it around for me. But I've used drugs like Ozempic
Hmm.
and Byetta. Those were amazing, amazing medications for me. And only recently, well, it's not so now. I think 2 years now, I'm taking a mealtime insulin.
Okay.
Right, so that's fairly new within the last couple of years for me.
And
Still take metformin.
did your doctors talk to you about low blood sugar? And if so, when did they
Hmm.
do that?
That's a great question. The answer is no, no, and no.
Wow.
Nobody ever did. Nobody ever did. And really, it wasn't until I learned about a Xeris product, the Gvoke HypoPen, right?
Mhm.
I saw I read an article about it, and I went right to my doctor, my endo, and I said, okay, let's have a conversation about hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
And she filled in all the blanks for me, and I said, wonder why, in the 8 years we've had this relationship, why was that not ever discussed? And she said, well, quite honestly, I didn't really think it was anything you're probably going to need to know.
Wow.
And then especially when insulin came part of my regimen.
Right.
Wow, now I mean my lows occur more because of my inability to calculate my carbs correctly, and
Yeah.
I overdose on my insulin, and I end up with low blood sugars, more so than I've ever had. But the doctors never talked to me, even when I was newly diagnosed. No one ever got into it with me about that.
So
No.
so
And this is a very common story that I've heard from many of my fellow diabetics.
yep, yep, yep. And it's so important for people with type 2, especially those on insulin, to know about low blood sugars because
Right.
they can happen at any time. And what was your first low blood sugar episode like? What symptoms did you notice?
Um, Shaky, sweaty, a little bit, something's different in my body, sweaty, like almost vibrating, if you
Yeah,
can imagine.
yeah.
Um, and it was really weird. And then I just started I realized what it was,
Mhm.
and I just started. I mean, I always had some of these guys around, right?
Right.
Glucose
Okay.
tabs. I always had some of those guys around. Um, but I just started eating
Yeah.
whatever I could, right? Just to kind of figure it out. And then that was kind of a scary episode,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know.
And
Um,
after you finish pretty much eating, like, did you notice like a swing, like kind of back up, like too high? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
right. Ooh, wow. And in those days, I was checking my blood sugar with with a
finger
meter,
prick. Hmm.
right? Fingerprint,
Yeah.
which I don't use anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so uh yeah, and it was awkward and difficult, and
Yeah.
it was really kind of, it was scary for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you you mentioned earlier about like the calculating the right amount of insulin
Yeah,
for carbs. Is that a skill that you've had to also teach yourself?
I did. And quite honestly, here's how I hacked around it. Um, Now what I do is I look at a meal. I've trained myself to know that that meal is 8 units. That snack is 4 units. You know, this
Yeah.
dish, this lasagna dish is 14 units.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't really calculate the carbs. It's all based on that, but
Yeah.
I just sort of hacked my way through to memorize. I know what toast and peanut butter is.
Right.
I know it's a 4 unit deal, and off we go.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
for our audience, who are especially those who are insulin, who are unfamiliar with insulin dosing or insulin to carb ratios, that's what Robert is describing. He is through trial and error, and that's for most of us who have diabetes. Diabetes is definitely a trial and error journey. But what Robert is describing is taking the right amount of insulin for a certain meal. So he knows, like he said, a lasagna dish, something that's higher in carbs, is going to require more insulin, whereas something that's maybe like a salad may not require
right,
as much insulin. But something that I know I've heard is you have people with type 2 diabetes or insulin who are just told to take a flat amount
right,
of insulin for every meal.
right.
But if you're eating something like a chicken salad and you overdose, you may feel symptoms of hypoglycemia, and that's kind of where the education gap is.
Absolutely. And I'm taking mealtime insulin, right? So
Yeah.
I only take this insulin when I eat. If I don't eat, I don't take it. But what I've also learned to do with this is if I think I need 12 units or 10 units, I'll take 5. And then I'll wait an hour and see what's happening and maybe take the other 5.
Yeah.
Or if I know I'm going to be in a restaurant where, I'd rather not, jab myself in the middle of a dining room,
Yeah.
I will tend to overcompensate, which is
Yeah.
not a good thing. And so therefore, that's when the hypoglycemia really starts in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And for me, when I get under 60,
yeah.
I'm feeling weird.
Okay. That was going to be the next question. Like, when do you notice that you start feeling those hypo symptoms? I know you said that you don't really use finger pricks anymore. You're on a CGM. And
Right.
has your CGM helped you identify those lows more often or
Oh,
accurately?
absolutely. Because just the fact that I can scan
Hmm.
often, I can see it going in what direction very
Yeah.
quickly, which alerts me to know, like, for example, I mean, it's real life, right? This is all real. We're
Yeah.
here. I'm a human. But about an hour and a half ago, I had a 70 trending a little bit down.
Mhm.
So knowing that you and I were going to get together here in just a little bit, I took a little bit. Sometimes I use this product, this
Mhm.
glucose SOS. It's a
Mhm.
powder product. It's really great. And I took a half a packet, and that just kind of leveled it off, brought it right back.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
so that's where the CGM really helps.
And how does exercise like impact your ability to manage lows? Do you not take, I know you said that you take insulin when you eat, but like how do you manage low blood sugar when you're being active?
Yeah. Well, so and my activity usually is walking and bike riding,
Mhm.
right? And so the really great thing for my friends out there who are listening today, um, exercise helps. Exercise, moderate exercise, right? I'm not talking marathons. I'm talking about a 15-minute walk in one direction and a 15-minute walk home,
Yeah.
right? Moderate exercise will really make your blood sugars normalize,
Yeah.
right? And but if I'm going on a bike ride or somewhere where I'm going to exert a lot of um, you know, effort, and it'll bring my blood sugars down. So I'm very conscious of having some things that will help me in case I have a low.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you mentioned your Zeus product earlier. Do you keep that on hand with you if you're going on a bike ride? Is that something that's giving you comfort um for when you could have a low blood sugar episode?
Yeah, so I'll take my hypopen
Mhm.
for sure on vacation, for sure if I'm traveling, for sure if I'm on an airplane,
Yeah.
for sure if I'm long distance traveling. If I'm out bike riding, typically I won't have that with me,
Yeah.
but I'll have my CGM. I
Mm.
might have some glucose tabs or some, glucose SOS packets,
Mhm.
something like that in my pocket, ready to go. But I'm also really conscious about, you know, what have I eaten? How much insulin have I taken before I go bike ride? Because if I do overdose, and
Yeah.
then it could be dangerous.
Right, right, right. And for audiences watching, the dangers of hypoglycemia are acute, which is why we're having this discussion because if you are, let's say Robert is out bike riding and let's say he did take insulin but maybe did not eat as much as he thought to cover
Mhm.
those carbs. When
Right,
Robert goes bike riding, he could be in the middle of a trail and he could drop low. He could possibly pass out, um,
right,
which is where things could get pretty scary. You may need some assistance, which is
right,
why like having something like his Gvoke hypopen um is important to have, so that way if someone, let's say someone or his wife for example,
right,
is that
right,
Robert is having a low, she
right.
knows what to do. And Robert, do you and your wife kind of coordinate on emergency preparedness?
Oh, absolutely. It's in our plan. I mean, she knows how to use the Gvoke hypopen,
Yep.
and understands. As a matter of fact, all my kids know how to do it, because they come here quite often, and
Yeah.
for me, one of the scarier times is in the evening or at night when I'm sleeping, and my alarm goes off and I'm having a low,
Yeah.
right? And you're already half out of it. She's quick to get up and check my CGM, and she'll scan me and see how it's going. And um, this is like, I mean, I think a product like Gvoke, like a hypopen, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of like the net
Yeah.
underneath the high wire,
Right. Right.
trapeze dudes.
Right.
It's a
Right.
safety net.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good because I know we mentioned glucose tablets, and I think typically people when they treat low blood sugars, it's usually with like candy or juice or some sort of fast acting carb. But in a situation where let's say you are sleeping, you're not in a state to be able to actually consume those things, which is why like
No,
those injections are
that's
important.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so kind of like going back to food, like let's say if you don't have, your hypopen, what are the food ways that you may treat a low blood sugar?
Um, I always keep dried fruit around,
Mhm.
right? Like dried pineapple, mango. I get them in my local supermarket, the little packages of like cranberry kind of dudes. So those work really good
Mhm.
um, for me. Or I might have, chocolate doesn't really work for me because it's not very fast acting.
Right.
Um, I'll have a packet of Skittles
Yep.
because those work really good for me,
Yes.
and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And there's always orange juice, right? And I'm
Yep.
not a big orange juice guy, but I'll chug juice. I have apple juice, I have orange juice,
Yeah.
and those are the sort of things. But for me, instead of the fat or anything like that, I typically will go to a glucose tablet or a glucose SOS or something like that for me. It's just my personal preference.
Yeah, yeah, and there's actually a reason why eating something that's just a pure like fast acting carb is preferential to something that may have fat or protein in it,
Yeah,
is because like the fat and protein will actually slow the digestion of the carb, so you won't
right,
see that
right,
your blood
right,
sugar rise as fast as like something like orange juice or like
right.
Skittles.
I mean, the challenge of products like this is that, or like a glucose tab, is that when you're in this state of hypoglycemia, right, you're already not thinking great. And
Yep.
I could polish off half a jar
Yep.
because my body is just craving it, and I'm panicking a
Yep.
little. So I'm eating, and I only need 3 tablets, right? I
Yes.
only need 3 or 4 to bring me out of it, and I'll eat 8,
Yep.
and then my blood sugar's at 280.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So now
that's
I've got to, now it's like, oh, now what?
yeah. And there's this thing called the 15-15 rule where you take like eat 15 grams of fast acting carbohydrate and then you wait 15 minutes to see where your blood sugar is. And if it's
Right?
not
Yeah,
at that level, then you kind of repeat the
yeah,
process. But
yeah.
it's a way to keep you from over treating because that blood sugar roller coaster is not fun. Like you're
No,
suddenly
no,
down here, and the next thing you
right,
know, like you're all the way up here, and it doesn't feel
right.
very good.
And that sounds great in theory,
Right.
but when you have a 50 blood sugar
Yep.
and you're feeling funky and just out of it,
Yep.
I mean, you just you got to it's like survival mode now. You do whatever it takes to get that blood sugar out.
Yeah, yeah. You feel like you can eat any and everything. I know when I know when I have low blood sugar, it's like my kitchen, I am ready to just like ransack my kitchen if I don't have
Right, right. Me too.
something
Right,
right then and there.
right,
Um, and then like, but I notice I'm less likely to overeat and overtreat if I have like some juicy juice in the fridge
right,
or like something that's gonna or some
right.
gummies or something. Um, so let's
Yeah.
get. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and with the help of you know CGM, or even
Yeah.
the blood sugar glucose monitor, you know, when you see that you're trending down,
Yep.
that's a good moment for me, anyways, to say, okay, something's going on here. I'm going to go eat something.
Yep.
I'll do that first. But there's just times when I'm sitting, doing work at my desk or on my computer or whatever, and I just all of a sudden don't feel good. And I check my
Yep.
blood sugar and I'm at 61
Yep.
and I'm trending down quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've definitely had those moments.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and for people who are watching who don't have a CGM, you can schedule and definitely talk to your doctor before making any treatment decisions. But you can schedule when you want to check your blood sugar if you are feeling some of those low symptoms. And in the description, we will put a link to the symptoms of hypoglycemia. But you can sort of like say like I'm feeling a little low. Let me check my blood sugar and then treat if you can and then check again.
right.
And Robert brought up a really good point earlier about the fear of hypoglycemia when you're sleeping. You can definitely set an alarm and like kind of wake up in the middle of the night to see where your blood sugars are to see if you are dropping low. And that's a good way to kind of track to see how your blood sugar is acting at night. If especially if you don't have a CGM, but you want to get more insight into your diabetes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Of course, I'm a big. You know this about me. I'm a big CGM fan. So
yep,
I'm out there saying, talk to your doctor about it. Talk to your
yep.
endo about it.
Yep, yep, and also, yeah, Robert, we've definitely talked about your experience with CGMs, and I'll also put a link to that too because it's a great interview for people to
Yeah.
read.
Oh, thank you.
You're so great, Robert. And I want to kind of get into some of the ways that you would love for providers to talk to their patients about this issue. Like, we mentioned earlier that high blood sugar is always like the topic in type 2 diabetes. If you had to kind of go back and talk to your provider or talk to any provider today about the importance of chatting about the subject with the type 2 patients, how would you go about it? What would you advise them to do?
I would start with the topic of time and range. You know, chat about what it means to be in range between 70 to 180, whatever your doctor is discussing with you, and
Mhm.
make that kind of your goal so that you have a baseline to know this is where I need to be,
Mhm.
right? Because here's what happens for me. I was told early on, yep, we want your blood sugars to be 125, and anything above that, you're a loser,
Oh,
right? I don't know
oh,
if they use that word, but
yeah,
that's how I felt, right?
yeah.
And even yesterday, my doctor said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna, your time in range is really good. you're 80% time in target range, but we can up the target a little bit. You've got 170, let's go to 180 and you're still going to be great. So I think that's very critical for them to talk about, and
Mhm.
really try to make diabetes something that it becomes their lifestyle now.
Mhm.
Not like you're a bad person, you have diabetes, you ate yourself into diabetes, all those cliche terms that are just so ridiculous.
Mhm.
Help people understand that it's a manageable disease,
Mhm.
and you might even live longer and live a healthier life managing a disease like diabetes because you're focusing on nutrition and
Yeah.
exercise and doctor visits.
Yeah.
It's those kinds of things that motivate me. And I think they motivate most people,
Right.
opposed to like, never eat that again. Don't touch that. Don't go near that. And
Yeah.
you got to run 20 miles a week.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, diabetes is all about the small changes and letting yourself kind of build up to a certain momentum. And
yeah,
that's also about like making sure that you are setting goals that matter to you, not
well,
necessarily what your provider always wants you to do. Yeah,
of course. And one size doesn't fit all.
exactly.
So, everyone is different. Everyone's A1C is different, right? I
Yep.
mean, you may be a 6.9 and I might be a 7.2, and that's my A1C and that's where I am. And, let's work with my disease with a 7.2 A1C and
Yep.
figure it out.
Yes. And something else like and this is why I love this topic is because when you have people with type 2 who start out at a really high A1C, the goal is to try to lower it. But what providers don't want you to do is to go from like, let's say 15 to 7, but then when they look at your chart or something, you have all these lows because also
Right,
you're not feeling good. And
right,
that's where
right.
it kind of goes back to what you mentioned about time and range. And for people who haven't heard of the term, or the term time and range, it's the amount of time that you spend between a certain set of endpoints. So generally it's 70 to 180, as Robert mentioned earlier. And the reason why it's a great metric, one, it can help you learn more about your A1C. They're pretty intertwined. But you can see, let's say you're spending 65% between 70 and 180, but then you have some moments where you're probably above that. But what's also going to be really important is see how often you're below 70. And that's
Right,
what doctors, they don't want you to fall below that. So it's a good way to learn how to correct those
right.
lows.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. And with the technology of CGMs,
Yep.
I mean, you can predict your A1C.
Yes. Yep. Yep. You surely can. There's I forgot what the indicator is called, but you can like look at your chart and it can give you like a sort of like estimated A1C.
Right,
Um,
right,
specifically with the freestyle Libre
right,
program.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that some CGMs get a bad rap for accuracy.
Yeah.
I think it's much more accurate than checking your blood sugars with, all the variables in your hands and
Right.
whatever. It's just, I think get over that is what I would say. The CGMs are, I mean, the technology is amazing. It's like your miniature laboratory. That's a whole other
Yep.
topic. You
Yeah.
know, I'm passionate about it
Yeah.
because I'm a lazy diabetic, right? I didn't like pricking my finger. It was horrible. I
Yeah.
didn't like it, and expensive and
Yeah,
so
it really, and it's also really good for people who are hypoglycemia unaware, because there are
yeah,
people who don't know how to really like point it out. They may feel like, oh, okay, I feel a little bit anxious, I feel a little
right,
bit restless, I'm maybe a little hungry, but I'm not exactly sure what that means. And the CG
right.
can really help you with that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So, Robert, this was a fabulous discussion, and I love to end these talks with words of encouragement. And you're one of the most encouraging people that people with diabetes could ever know. Would you mind giving some positive words to people who are watching this and are feeling, they could probably use like a little pep talk?
Yeah. Okay, you ready? Here we go.
Mhm.
No, I'm kidding. So here's this is true though. What I'm about to say is all true. I wake up every morning and I say to myself, Robert, you've got to do better today than you did yesterday. Because the challenge is if I focus on my performance yesterday, which may not have been great from a diabetic standpoint,
Mhm.
I can't beat myself up because it's that day's over. Now I'm in today and I'm
Mhm.
moving forward. So listen, if you've not been a good diabetic, whatever that might be in your mind, and feeling guilty about what's been your past, I would say today's a new day. Let's just move forward. Let's, because you've got a lot of days in front of you, and let's focus on that. My favorite analogy is, do you know why the rear view mirror in your car is so small and the windshield is so big? Because it's not about where you've been, it's about where you're going. So
Mm.
I'm going to just say focus on forward. Focus on where you are going and your family and your kids and your health. Listen, there are days that I don't have good days, right, from my diabetes, but I can't beat myself up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a human. I'm weak. I want the whole Hershey bar with almonds. And I know that, can't do that every day. But I do know this, as a chef living with diabetes for a long time,
Yeah.
everything in moderation, right? This is a lifestyle way of living. Avoid the fad diets. Avoid the wacky supplements that you read about and see about that's a cure for diabetes. I
Mm.
mean, focus on a lifestyle way of living and eating. Fresh foods, frozen foods, you know, less sodium, lower carbohydrates, higher fiber, lots of flavor,
Yes.
um, and exercise moderately. You know, people ask me all the time, what's the number one thing I should do to help me with my diabetes? And I say, you mean the number five things you should do? Because it's not any one thing; it's a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, if you were to go see the Rolling Stones and it was only Mick Jagger, it would not be very great. The main fact is, you got Keith Richards and you got Charlie Watts and you got the drummer and you got everybody playing together. Now you got something.
Yeah.
And diabetes is the same way. If
Yeah.
you're going to think you're going to fix your diabetes by just not eating carbohydrates, you're missing the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So
And
focus
listen,
on
if
forward.
I
Yeah.
can do it, if I can do it,
Right.
you can do it. Because, you know,
Super
I'm not a
encouraging, Robert.
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a diabetic educator of any kind, although I have three children, Attila, Dracula, and Frankenstein. That makes me kind of a psychiatrist of sorts. But I'm just a chef living with type 2 diabetes, trying to figure it out every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's on my mind every day because I want to be here for a while. I want to hang out with you for as long as I can.
Yeah.
And part of that is taking care of yourself and learning about products like the Gvoke HypoPen, and learning about how the tools in your toolbox that can help you overcome.
Yes.
Surround yourself with people that love you and that understand diabetes. Be careful of the diet, as my good buddy Bill Polanski would say, the diabetic police,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yep. Yep.
it's the people that look at you and say, well, you can't eat a cheeseburger. You have diabetes. Why are you eating macaroni and cheese?
Yeah.
They don't understand,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and
Wow.
take ownership. I mean,
Yes.
that would be the one thing I would say. It's
Yeah.
not your family's responsibility. It's no one's responsibility but you. And when you take responsibility for your own behaviors, especially when it comes to diabetes, amazing things happen.
Yep.
I'm proof positive of that.
Yep. Yep. Yes. Yes. Robert, you are. You really are. And that's a great like encouraging note to end on. Robert, also please tell people where they can get in touch with you.
Well, the best place is to call my mother. She'll tell you lots of nice things about me. No, I'm kidding. Um, sorry. My website. Okay. Sorry.
It's funny. This is why no, but but this is what I mean. Where I say like to me, this is giving talk not downplaying the seriousness of diabetes, but showing that talking about diabetes can be fun. It can be
Yeah.
lighthearted. It can be
Yeah.
encouraging. So, and this is part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the best place to find me is happydiabetic.com. That's my website. So if you go there, you'll find my link to my podcast. My son and I do a podcast called the Happy Diabetic Kitchen. There's links to cookbooks. There's lots of recipes online. But the most important part of my website is at the very top, there's a contact button. That's where you find me. So what I'm really going to encourage people to do is if you have a question, if you have a concern, if you want me to help you figure out how to make a recipe friendly and diabetic friendly, contact me. I read all my emails. They come directly to me. My Facebook links are there. My Instagram links are there. It's all there.
Yeah.
But that's the one-stop shop for me.
All right. Well, Robert, I'm going to put your social links and links to your website and podcast
Yeah.
in the
Awesome.
description box,
Cool.
where people can get in touch with you, Robert. Everyone, thank you for joining us today for this just amazing discussion about hypoglycemia. Please, before you make any decisions regarding your care, please talk to your healthcare provider about low blood sugar and how you should be personally treating it. We will be posting some general resources for you about hypoglycemia awareness. And if you need other tips on living with type 2 diabetes, please go to beyondtype2.org. You can also find our other chats with Robert. And if you want to connect with other people with type 2, come join the Beyond Type 2 community app. It's a great place, Robert. I think you're in there, Robert.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So people are helping each other all the time in the the Beyond Type 2 app. It's available on your smartphone as well as on your desktop. So please feel free to join, and there'll be a link to join in the box below.
Yeah. Can I mention one more thing?
Yeah.
If I could, before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
I'm going to encourage everybody out there to be your own best advocate.
Mm-hmm.
When you go see your doctor or endocrinologist, be prepared. Have a list of questions.
Yes.
Make him work for you.
Yep.
Because I know how they are. They're busy people, right? But if you come with questions and do a little research and say, hey, what about, what about, hypopens, and what about, glucose tablets and whatever. Come with your questions and advocate for yourself, because nobody will do it if you don't.
Yep. And I would definitely want to add to that. Like it makes your appointment so much more productive. And I could tell you your providers, that's exactly what they want. They want to know what you need.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, no one is, we're all human, no one is a mind reader.
Yeah.
So definitely, like, whatever questions you have, just come armed with them. It makes your relationship with your provider that much better. And if it doesn't, that's a sign that you need to find another one.
Yeah.
But no, everything Robert said was absolutely.
Yeah, take your shoes and socks off before they get in before they walk in, and they'll go, oh yeah, I guess I should check your feet.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Yeah, my doctor does that, which is
my doctor does. Yeah.
Yep. So like that, being your own best advocate is how you really start getting that kind of really good control of your diabetes. And I know I've said this in other videos, which is like, you are the number one person on your healthcare team, and that's also part of that ownership aspect.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And your site also has amazing information. So there's so much good information out there.
Yeah. Everyone, beyondtype2.org. You will also find, again, links to get to know Robert. And then we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.